Hello and welcome to this short video where I will try to give you a little bit more suggestions and tips on how to write chapter 3, the methodology. So this chapter is divided in three sections, actually, sorry, in five sections. I actually think that this chapter is quite long, I think, because there are many things that you need to discuss. The good thing is that many things you already have because we have worked on this. So maybe you don't have to write a lot right now because some things you already have them somewhere, but let's go section by section. So first we start with this first section on research philosophy. We have a lecture on research philosophy. I think it was maybe the first or the second lecture. You can go and check the video lecture also if you want to remember, because you need to discuss the philosophy behind the topic that you are studying. So I think that because you are doing both methodologies, the qualitative and the quantitative, you have to be in the middle. You have to acknowledge that what we are studying is something that is objective because it can be measured, like happiness can be measured, the global mindset can be measured, sustainable consumer behavior, and also your independent variables can be measured. They are objective in some way, but all of them also include a certain level of interpretation. Even though that they can be quantified, that's why we are doing the survey, and that's we assume that they are objective and we want to test and discover. We also acknowledge that there is subjectivity. It's a bit challenging, I think, because you don't have only one of the two paradigms. In your thesis, you can choose one of the two, or to be interpretivist or to be more positivist. But here, since we are doing both methodologies, we have to discuss the two things, and then we need to state that we are in between both. What we are studying is something that exists, that is subjective, it's there, it can be measured, happiness can be measured, global mindset can be measured, everything can be measured and objectified, but on the other hand, it's also up to interpretation, so it's something in between. So if you try to answer to these questions when you write that part, it can be one or two paragraphs. I don't think you need to write a lot. And if you need help on this, go and watch again the video lectures from this lecture two or one. I can't remember which number it is. And I can show you from the good example. You can also check in Canvas, but I think in the research philosophy, they kind of picked up on different things, ontological epistemology, ontology, epistemology, and then they discuss a little bit about the approach too and the methodology a little bit. I think I could criticize a little bit this good submission for two things. I think they could explain a little bit more, like why is this the right approach and why is this the right positioning, something in between. I think they mostly say what they're doing, describing, but they do not justify a lot. And second, and very important, I think they could have added some references. I think if you take a look at the list of references document that is in the group assignment, you can borrow some references from there to discuss, for example, the in between ontology and epistemology. Also from that research philosophy, we have a very interesting article. I think it's the one that my supervisor wrote. And I think it's also very interesting in that middle point between objectivity and subjectivity, the in between. So this should be a short section. Remember, you have no limit, so if you want to write more, it's okay, but I think the minimum should be one long paragraph or two paragraphs. And I think this is one of the sections that could be improved more from this group who submitted something good, but I think this philosophy could be improved, I mean, being very critical. Let's go back to the instructions and let's move to data collection because data collection is one of these very dense, important sections of what you are going to write. So look, in this data collection, you can divide data collection in 3.2.1 quant, 3.2.2 qual. That's a way of doing it. I'm an accountant, so I love accounts and sub-accounts. I love this structure, but it's up to you. You can talk about data collection in general or divide it. So try to answer to these questions. How did you collect the quantitative data? Remember, we collected the data with a survey that we created, but I ended up kind of putting all the questions together, and then you send it to the students and you answer it to yourself, or everyone in the classroom answer to it. You send it via email, message, or all of these things. So I think these questions are around here. Then we have a question on the sample. We ended up with 315, and we sampled our like the characteristics of the sample are, remember that I think in the lab we talk about it. It has to be students, it has to be university students in Sweden, and it is also, so it doesn't matter if they are born or not in Sweden. It has to be a student that is in Sweden. So keep in mind that when you discuss this, like what are kind of, how do you construct that sample? Like what is the sample of what you want to test? And finally, how did you ensure the validity of the survey items? Here, it's very important what we did in lab one. You remember that in lab one, you submitted this. Please copy paste this at the end of this section of the 3.2.1 in the quant part. Copy paste literally this. Just fix this number because we calculated this in the lab too. I mean, everyone has a different Cronbach alpha, but please just update the number that you calculated, update that number here. And everything is just copy paste because this is literally what I want you to write in here. You ensure the validity of the survey items in two ways. You used an instrument that has been used in previous research, and second, you calculated the Cronbach alpha to assess the reliability. So it's a very good instrument. Actually, that's why most of the models work, and we could kind of conclude something from that because the survey is actually very good. All the questions are very good. They behave quite good statistically, so talk about that. But it's basically just copy paste from there. If we take a look at what they wrote in data collection, it's basically that how they developed the interview. They had a lower number, 119. You went further than that, 315, I think it's our number. And then as you can see, this is also kind of the copy paste that I mentioned. After that, they talk about qualitative data collection. So let's come back to qualitative data collection. Explain all of these things. How did you collect the qualitative data? I think it was with the interviews, right? How did you construct the interview guide? Talk about that. Like it was constructed at the group in a discussion that was led by one of the teachers. How did you conduct the interview? Was it via Zoom or face to face? Why did you choose to do it like that? What are the advantages, disadvantages? How did you find and select the interviewees? Similar to the previous one, which characteristics do you need for the interviewees? Please make sure that this is consistent, both things, the quant and the qual. It has to be students, two students who are in Sweden, and then it depends. Many groups took different approaches. I remember some groups tried to have two extreme cases, like one, I don't know, like born in Sweden, um, doing, I don't know, like marketing, and another student, like a exchange student from France that is doing finance. So to have like two views. That could be a possibility. Explain that because that's very important. Or if you just randomly selected two students without much filters, also put it there, but explain why. If you take a look at that, that is more or less put in here. I think that they try to write that in here. The next part, the data analysis, it's about how you treated the data. What did you do to analyze that? So in the quantitative one, explain basically lab two, because in lab two, we analyze the data. So explain that the first step was to clean the data, to code the data. You remember we had to change the yes and no's to 1 and 0, all of these things. How did you clean the data? How did you analyze descriptive statistics, the regression analysis? Also explain the models because we have three models that is in video 5 of the lab two. We have a simple model with just X and Y. Then the model 2 has more controls and model 3 has more controls. Explain that we had three models to test the hypothesis. And that comes, if I can show you. Mm, mm, mm. Where is it? And here is the group assignment thing. Data analysis, they talk about that, and they also include the control variables that they used. I think that's also good that if you can include that. This state your dependent variable, independent, your controls, the other controls. It's also this very important how it was coded, like 1 is female, 0 is male. I think you have the same, I think. I think here in year of study, we actually had something better, like we did the 2025 minus 1 or something like that. If you go back to lab 2, we we calculated something because we wanted to get the number of years they have been studying instead of 2024. So check that. Then they explain more things, then they explain the models. For each model, they tested for different things. And I don't know why they didn't kind of uh, separate the qualitative analysis because it's in the same paragraph, but qualitative analysis is also kind of explaining basically, I guess, workshop 2, the workshop on qualitative analysis. How did you transcribe the interviews? Explain that you used AI if you did it, if you modified something, if you took care of a few things. How did you clean that data? Because maybe you also had to check that it was correctly done. Uh, how did you find the relevant code and themes? I mean, we did this on the workshop. It was like an iterative process. It was also like discussion between your peers. Explain if there were challenges, how did you solve them? Try to bring drama in the analysis and a lot of transparency. And what qualitative analysis did you conduct is, as I mentioned, and you can see in the presentation and the slides from the workshop too, it is thematic analysis, and you use an actual coding for creating the constructs and the open-ended, semi-open coding, semi-open coding to identify the concepts. So try to write about that here in qualitative. They did that in this paragraph. I think that is very dense. There are many things to write. But then in trustworthiness and in ethics, I think it becomes a little bit simpler, but important to still talk about it, especially because it's in the rubric of your thesis. So do not forget these 2 points. They are easy to discuss, but maybe since they are easy, maybe you forget, and they are worth quite a few points. So don't forget to include them. You need to discuss and convince the reader that your study is trustworthy. So to do that, please discuss the internal validity, external validity, reliability, and objectivity of the quant part. And in the qual part, the credibility, transferability, dependability, confirmability. It's basically, I think, 2 paragraphs. I think they wrote more, but I mean, minimum 2 paragraphs, one for quant, one for qual. You can write more if you want. If you don't remember about trustworthiness, our last lecture, I guess it was lecture 4, uh, had this in the we talk about these trustworthiness things. So you can go, you can check the slides, you can check the pre-recorded lectures if you forgot about this. And then ethical concerns, as I mentioned, we can go to the instructions. How did you gain consent? In the survey, it's very easy to explain that because we literally have a question where we ask for the consent, and we only included the people who answered yes, I agree, and actually everyone agreed. So very easy to communicate that. In the interviews, it can be trickier. I remember I had a conversation with one group where they told me that they wanted to explore like kind of mental illness in the happiness topic, and they were a bit worried about ethical aspects, so they will going to ask for a signature on the consent. If for some reason you also did that, also include it in here. If not, I told you that it was okay if you only ask and you got it recorded, and that's good enough. How did you treat the data? Did you comply with GDPR? If you anonymize someone, why and how did you ensure that? Talk about it. You don't need a lot, maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs about ethical concerns. So in my opinion, I think the methodology chapter is long, but you have everything that you need. Everything is, you have already did it. You have the lecture with all of these concepts that you only need to develop a little bit, and you only need to explain based on what you have done. Where is it? The trustworthiness. You have already done everything, the analysis, the collection of the data. You only need to explain it. So I don't think it's difficult to write it. You only need time to write it. So spend some time with this chapter 3 try to cover as much as you can, try to justify most of it. Remember that my criticism to that good assignment is their lack of references. So use that, maybe I can close here this thing, because if you go to list of references, I think you have very useful references that you can use for almost everything. Use all of these papers. That's something that you can use. So that's it for chapter 3 methodology. I will do another video for chapter 4 findings.